well, welcome back to the Acumatica Playbook. In our last episode, we talked about choosing the right partner. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper into ERP fit and what that looks like and how we help customers and prospective customers on that journey of determining ERP fit. At the end of the day, you're not just buying software, you're making a strategic choice into what software and what partner you're going to work with. I'm joined again by Darren Redies, our COO. Darren and I have been working together now for too many years to talk about, probably coming on 30 years. And he and I have worked really closely over those years to really reinforce our mission of propelling companies forward. And the subject of ERP fit and discovery is near and dear to my heart, and I know it's very near and dear to Darren's heart. So thanks for joining me, Darren.
My pleasure.
So let's just jump right in. Let's talk about how we see discovery unfolding for prospective customers and why it's so important.
Discovery is learning. It's learning about the customer and what's going to help that customer move forward. And that really starts right from the very first conversation. So you could say the first time you meet with an answer company executive to start talking, there's discovery going on and they're learning. But it's one of those things that continues to go deeper and deeper. And again, the question is, what is the goal each time you have a conversation? The goal for me is to understand what's really going to make a difference at that company. So, those initial conversations start with, okay, help me understand at a high level, maybe the quantity of change that you're looking for helps me know really what your budget should be, what we should be looking at, for time frame. Then we're going deeper and looking into really starting to understand, okay, let's start quantifying these things. Let's start figuring out the specific areas. But discovery is not something that ends at any point really along the journey.
Agreed.
That depth of learning continues so that when you start implementing, I always tell people at a kickoff, you thought we asked a lot of questions before, just get ready because we will keep on asking questions. That's our job, is to keep on asking those questions that aren't always easy to answer.
Yeah, I know in those early discussions that we have prospective customers, they're often challenged with the time investment that it will take. Now I'm going to take that time investment and I'm going to multiply it by 4. What do they get out of that investment of time?
Well, what do you get when you don't invest that time? I mean, try to get from here to the other side of the room with a blindfold on. Right? If you don't know where you're going, if you don't have guideposts along the way, you're just stumbling around in the dark. And that's the problem that I see happening is, well, we don't want to go through this time to go and answer a bunch of questions to understand this. So we fumble around in the dark together and we don't end up where you want to be. We end up in exactly the wrong spot. So you think it takes time to go and answer questions. It takes a lot longer to fumble your way around the room to eventually find the door than it would if you just asked the questions and knew up front, here's where we're going.
Yeah, and I think a lot of prospective customers, they think about the demo as the defining event, right? I'm gonna
customers,
everybody, right?
I think a lot of people focus on the demo, and so much is put around the demo, which people view as a show at times. And to me, a demo is not a show. A demo is just another way of communicating, and it's a way of translating. So now, if you've gone and I'm going to stick with my analogy of finding your way across a room, if you've gone and you've asked the questions to know what are the obstacles, what are in the way, where are we trying to get to? The demo is just saying, okay, we're going to walk from here to here, and then we're going to stop, and we're going to come around this path. It's explaining, here's what the path is to get from where you are to where you want to go. That's it. So the demo is actually a very small piece, but people do focus on that.
Well, and I think, and coming back to our first episode where we were talking about partnership,
Yeah.
um, the nature of the questions and the
Mm.
type of questions we ask are going to be far more telling to that prospective customer about who we are and what we know than the demo.
Yeah, well, and I mean that leads us back to the whole partner, right? I'm focusing on the partner as opposed to just on the solution. But this is the thing, if we bring it back into, our conversation today about looking for fit, it really comes down to, we want to know where the software fits. The only way you know that is by knowing, again, where are you trying to go and where are you coming from? From that, then we can have a conversation where we can go understand that in depth and then translate that and say, okay, here's a solution stack that makes sense. Here's the elements out of the solution stack that we need to focus on to go and take you from here to there. The demo, again, is that communication of, here are the most important things, because a demo is never going to cover every single bit. And gosh, if I was a customer trying to watch a demo that tried to cover every single bit would be baffling.
Little bit overwhelming.
For sure.
So that really makes me think of that requirements checklist that we often start with, whether a customer has hired a selection firm to kind of help them evaluate, and we get this, 1,000 line Excel spreadsheet that we need to go through, or they come even with often a more streamlined kind of version of that. And I often feel like we start that process a little hamstrung as a result. Um, how how is somebody supposed to navigate that? What's the starting point and what's the value of that checklist?
So there is value in the checklist. First of all, I won't say the checklists are totally out, but it's the way those checklists are constructed and how you came to have that checklist is the first part. Um, if this is something where somebody hands you a list of 1,000 lines and says, pick the ones that are applicable, how do you know which ones are really applicable? You take a look and you say, oh, that sounds like it could be. And you start ticking these things. I was reading a great book recently by a company called Strategizer called Value Proposition Design. And this is really aimed more at companies developing software or developing widgets, whatever it is, but looking at evaluating the market and looking for fit based on value, which is really what we're talking about here.
Right.
And the things to just make it work are essentially a third. That's 1/3. So if that's all that you're looking at, you've got a third of the picture so far. The other comes from the gains and the pains that we're solving for. That's the other 2/3. So really the majority of this, and again, this is where so often what these checklists achieve is to say, oh, well, here's what we do today. So the system needs to do that. It absolutely does need to cover what you do today, although it might do it in a different way.
Right.
But
Right.
if all you're doing is going and replacing like for like, that's a big investment just to say get you on the cloud, get you into a new user interface.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of circles back to my initial question. What does the customer get out of discovery?
Yeah,
And the more value they get out by the deeper the questions, the deeper we go into understanding their business and we can uncover the value, the the more they're going to get out of their project and their implementation,
for
but
sure.
also the more they're going to be able to evaluate their partner as well, because it's in the depth of those questions that you get an understanding of, are you partnering with the right organization?
I see this clearly defined for us when we look at organizations where you have people that are maybe going and evaluating and making the decision, and then they have to take those to a board. Because what's the board looking for?
Board's looking for value.
The
How's this
board
going to
is
propel
looking
our
for a
company?
business case,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's show us why we should be spending this money. That's our job, is to help our customers define the business case, whether it's a board or whether it's just their own group, whatever. If you don't have a business case for doing this, you got no business going and implementing a new solution.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're just automating some manual process and getting some better reports without defining what those material benefits are even going to be, any system in the will do that. QuickBooks will do it.
Any and
Yeah.
every,
Yeah.
right? Like the things that drive me bonkers are, when I hear, oh yeah, we got requirements on this, because they want to be in the cloud and they want better reporting, and they wanted some automation because they feel like things are too manual. Oh, come on, everybody needs those three things. Those are things that we can take for granted, and like you said, every single system out there does that. Some better than others, but nonetheless, those are not requirements.
Right. Agreed. So, Darren, if this is so important, why doesn't everybody do it?
These are not easy conversations to have. I've referred to this, and I'll tell people right up front that this is a bit like pulling teeth at times, because we're going to go, and if we're doing our job right, we're asking questions for which people haven't probably prepared. Very few people recognize that this is what they need to go into. And by that, what I mean is we'll ask things like, oh, okay, well, if that accounts payable process, you're saying it takes you a lot of time. How much time, Sean?
Right.
Right? Like, how many hours are we talking about? And it's one of those things where we're going to force you to make guesses. They're going to be numbers that you don't have. They're going to be things that you hadn't thought of. And people are uncomfortable with guesses, for starters, but I'll say a guess is better than zero information at any time. It's remarkable how close those guesses often are to what reality is. Sometimes they're off, but usually not by huge magnitudes. And they at least start to guide you through this as well too. And once again, like it's a question of focusing not on the entire solution, on the pieces of the solution that are actually going to make a big difference for your company. You can always, expand out into other areas afterwards, but start with what makes a difference.
I totally agree. Like, we don't need to demonstrate how to apply cash, right? But help us understand how this is going to improve our outstanding receivables, our days to pay. What are the mechanisms that potentially solve that problem if it is a big problem we're solving in the business?
And I always, would say come into this with a very open mind. Don't assume anything. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a blank mind.
Right.
I'm still coming in with a lot of experience over the years to say, okay, I've seen companies like yours before. This is typically what they face. And when you say you have a problem in AR, I'm going to assume some things, but I'll call out those assumptions as well.
Right.
And if you start telling me, well, we've got a situation where when money comes in, one of the toughest things is to figure out what the applications are because we have these rules and they have these branches, they have these child companies, whatever. That could be a thing.
So thinking about an organization that is thinking about starting a process, they feel the pain, they haven't quantified that pain, they're not even really sure how to go about selecting a system, and they're not ready to hand over that choice to AI and just ask AI for a recommendation. Maybe we get there, but we're not there today. How do they start? What is that? What should they be doing before they reach out and then just start getting a whole bunch of inbound calls? Because every website they land on is going to result in somebody reaching out to them.
So it's interesting that you bring up AI, because I think we can learn ourselves from AI and how it works. The key to getting a good AI response is good prompts into it. And that's what you can prepare ahead of time. So if anybody's watching this podcast and is preparing to go into this, it's starting to get those prompts ready for this. And this is where those guesses. So, you mentioned, okay, we're feeling the pain. Start to figure out, why are we feeling the pain? Where exactly are we feeling the pain? How much pain are we feeling each one of these little processes that goes and adds up to a whole lot of pain?
And starting to think about your organizational structure and the stakeholders that are going to need to participate
For
in that
sure.
process
For
and have
sure.
influence.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, one of the big red flags always is, oh well, IT can go and take a look at this. IT is not making this decision.
Right.
This is not a decision about just your computer system. This is a decision about how to give tools to the business. And you know for sure that by the time the dust settles on this, you're going to get the C-suite all involved in there, and probably a lot of directors for various areas, because it affects all of them in their day-to-day life.
And even if IT understood the business well enough to be able to actually go out and make the right decision about a solution, that isn't preparing the organization for the next step, which is implementing it, which means building buy in, building consensus, ensuring that the organization is actually ready to embark upon this journey.
Absolutely. And again, what I'd say is, if you're looking for, okay, I want to be prepared for this, I don't want to waste time, I want to shortcut this a little bit, we do have some tools on our website too that people can look at, that'll give you an idea of the sorts of information to start to gather, the team that you should be gathering together on this. Um, Basically, how do I prep for those initial discussions, for that initial
Yeah.
discovery?
So that sounds like a really good resource. How do people find that?
So on our website, you can find that. So if you go to our website and just do a quick search up at the top for system evaluation,
Hmm,
it'll come right up for you.
nice. Very cool. What a great resource.
Right?
We have a fantastic website, don't we? So, Darren, tell me, what do prepared customers do well?
They come prepared, perhaps with some of these bits of information. Um, they their half of the equation has to match our half, and so I will say this is up to us as well. Both sides have to come with an open mind. um, they've got to come with an open mind to recognize this process, this discovery, this evaluation might not go down the path they thought it would. And we have to come with an open mind, recognizing that although we've done thousands of these, we should be prepared to be surprised. There are things that can come out from this. Now, as I say, going and thinking, and I would say again, with that open mind, think beyond what you'd initially considered in terms of the system, and start to think about, what are we really trying to accomplish as a company in the next 5 to 10 years? And there's going to be all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the ERP, or at least that you thought had nothing to do with the ERP. Bring those up anyway.
Right.
Bring those up, get those prepared, be prepared to share that information in terms of where you're going, because your partner should be going in and taking a look and thinking about this. And geez, a product like Acumatica, especially, where we take a look at the changes really that come to that product, the gains within the product that come every single release. There are all sorts of new areas they won't have considered. And even if they've done their research, they'll have no idea that the system can start to move them down the path in certain areas, unless they bring those up. We're asking those questions and exploring perhaps some areas that never would have made it onto a checklist.
Well, and that does really highlight an important point, which is discovery never actually ends.
Exactly.
Like,
And this is
that
what I was saying up
it's
front,
an
right?
evolution. It's not a revolution, right?
100%, 100%. There's, when we talk about evolution, revolution, maybe it's um, more dramatic at the beginning of this process, where again, focus on that big bang
Right.
up front. But absolutely, those conversations hopefully continue throughout your journey. Um, it's, to use a hackneyed phrase, it's not the end, it's the end of the beginning. When you go live, that's when the real gains start to happen. And we talk about things that people focus maybe too much on. The demo is one, and then during the implementation, it's go live. Oh, everything's about getting to go live. Getting to go live is important, but it's so that you can start your journey beyond that. And that's where discovery continues. That's where continuing to look for value continues. And if you look at the value that a customer gets, well, they get no value through that preparation to go live. Hopefully, they get a big blip after that. But that's where there should be a big climb after that in terms of the value that they keep on gaining out of the
Got it.
system.
Absolutely. So, Darren, you've been doing this now for 30 years at the Answer Company. And so I know you've got a lot of experience working with different types of companies, across the entire spectrum of the type of organizations that Acumatica serves. Share an example where a company just came really prepared and left the process more enlightened.
Yeah, there are a number. There's one that always kind of sticks out in my brain, probably because of the magnitude, and because it took me in a direction that I wouldn't have expected. It was a large distribution company, um, and when we talk about them being prepared, first of all, they were prepared for these deep dive questions. And they had defined up front that, listen, when we go down this path, we want ROI on everything, which was great. It was exactly what we hope to be able to achieve with this. Um, but what we started to get into, and again, I was talking about asking questions and thinking about things as an organization in areas that you might not have considered. We started to get into logistics for them being a distribution company. You can imagine that was a big part. But the amount that they were spending on freight was in the millions, freight and logistics. And one of the things that came out of this is, yeah, we know that with the right information, we could really aggressively negotiate with our carriers. And even if we were able to just bring that down by 10%, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that go on here. So all of a sudden, when we knew that, well, then we could take a look at solutions that we never would have considered. Because all of a sudden we knew the value of that information. And we ended up bringing in uh, really what we would have thought was way too pricey a solution to go and get into some really detailed information, detailed analysis um, that helped them go and make those negotiations possible with their carriers. And they did, go and achieve exactly the gains they were hoping for. But as I say, the things that made that work were, first of all, the willingness to go and have a conversation about things that maybe wouldn't have made it into the checklist. Um, Being open-minded on both sides of the fence. So on their side, going in, they definitely had to come up with some guesses on that because they didn't have the
Right.
information for sure, but they had a gut instinct. And so they could throw some numbers on that. And for us to open our mind and to think about something that we never would have considered for most of our customers, because we would have thought of it as cost prohibitive, but where it could absolutely make sense for an organization like that.
Yeah, very cool. That's a good story. So, Darren, this has been a really great conversation today. It's something that we live every day in terms of working with customers and helping them evaluate solutions. Some final thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny. We spent the last podcast talking about partner fit, and I feel like we've kind of come full circle back around to this. So we started talking about looking for fit in the software, but it again comes down to having a partner that you can have deep dive conversations with, that you can go and explore these topics with, uh, that's going to go and take a look at your business, and not just take your checklist and not just take the easy path of the questions that you were all ready for. That's going to challenge you. That fit then leads to going and finding that software fit, to going and determining that solution that you'd never considered all of a sudden makes sense. It comes down to, sure, some preparation can help, um, but really it's a comfort level to go into the unknown, unexplored areas with a partner um, that's got the experience to, first of all, know the questions to ask,
Right.
to know the areas to explore, and to be willing to be a bit uncomfortable.
If people leave this podcast today with kind of any takeaway, the one thing I hope that they leave with is a belief that investing more than an hour in a discovery will be time well spent. That for every hour they invest in that upfront process with us will result in a magnitude different, better um, ability for us to solution,
Yeah.
ability for us to demo, and also ultimately to have a roadmap to a successful implementation of Acumatica.
Yeah, and it's that last part, right? So we're talking about, you really think in an hour you can fully describe everything that's going on with your business, and you're going to bring me to a point that I understand, so that I can go and tell you what you should be doing differently. And okay, well, yeah, we'll talk to you for an hour, and then we want a 4-hour demo to come out of this, because in that hour, we'll certainly, you'll know everything to show us. We said that, first of all, it's more than the demo, and it is that demo is just a communication tool. But even if you want to go and start looking at times and expectations on this, the time spent answering questions in discovery is likely to be at least as big as the demo. So if you're thinking that you're going to get a 2-hour demo, be prepared to answer questions for at least 2 hours. And it could go beyond that. Again, we talk about going and how long does it take to answer the questions versus how long does it take to stumble around in the dark if you don't answer those questions up front.
No, absolutely. So we appreciate everybody taking some time to participate in and listen to today's episode of our Acumatica podcast. Hope this conversation today has kind of clarified the role of discovery in determining ERP fit, and we look forward to future sessions. If you're looking to learn a little bit more about The Answer Company and Acumatica, please visit our website, theanswercompany.com.